Welcome, another episode, Dr. James Beckett Sports Card Insights. Thanks sponsors, Topps Panini and Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins and Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, and ComC.com. So great sponsors. We've got a great guest. We're going to do the format today of dueling questions. I've done that before, but a lot of these episodes have been with people that I know that I've known for decades. I have not known Mike for decades, but he's a good guy and has a great. I guess I could say you have a great voice. You have a voice for the industry in the sense that in your blogging and your podcast, you're trying to help collectors and emerging collectors really understand what can be a complicated hobby. So we're going to bat some questions back and forth for the benefit of each other, I suppose, as well as for the benefit of our listeners. So welcome, Mike. And I want to give you the honor of having the first question. So do you have a question for me? And then I'll do my best to answer it, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Well, thanks again for having me on. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to chat. So I do. I think one of my questions that I got for you is, you talked about your collecting journey. You've shared that in the past as a kid, and you've shared that, eventually you were involved and helped run and own a card shop and eventually, started Beckett, right? But my question is, at what point in your collecting journey did the switch flip or did the light come on that added not just the collecting side, but the business side too? That point where you decided that you also maybe wanted to start to try to make a little money in this hobby as well.
Well, I don't, to me, it's a false dichotomy that you either are a collector, you're an investor, or that you're just a pure collector and you don't care about the money, or vice versa. No, I always tried to, I was always buying and selling, as you said, at a card shop. I set up at shows, I organized collecting clubs. So there was always a little bit of financial interest, but it mainly I enjoyed the people, I enjoyed the cards. I was very blessed to have to stumble on a hobby that has been just a lifelong kind of dream come true. Having said that, when I started Beckett Publications, it started out being a lot of fun, and aspects of it were always a lot of fun. But to the point of your question, the business aspects are not as much fun. It's a lot more fun pricing cards and meeting with hobbyists about trying to put out publications that are appealing and accurate for a hobby that was growing leaps and bounds. Toward the end of the years when it wasn't growing as much. It seemed I just had like a regular business. And even though, again, I love the people, I love the subject matter, it's still, I basically got promoted into a CEO instead of kind of an expert practitioner. And I really enjoyed being with the cards, and now I get to do that. So I've been retired. So the business aspects, Mike, are again, in fact, when I sold the company, it was sold to people that treated it like a business. And I won't say it wasn't a business, but my desire wasn't to have a business that was like every other business where you're looking at a bunch of spreadsheets. I mean, if the business was the people. So anyway, does that answer it for you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I got a question for you. What present company excluded, tell me about some other podcasts in the industry that you recommend. Can't be yours, can't be mine. What else is out there that you're excited that you really look? You don't have to pick just one, but what are you really excited about when the upcoming week? What do you think? Oh boy, I'm really excited. Eric's got a new episode, or John's got a new episode, or I can't wait for Hobby Hotline. I mean, what are you excited about with what else is out there besides, again, excluding you and me? Podcast.
Sure. I think, there's a few that come to mind. I think one of the things that I love about where we're at in the industry right now is there are so many shows out there, and they all have slightly different angles and slightly different perspectives. A couple that I like, I'll give you a couple for different reasons. The About the Card show is one of my favorites, and primarily because that's kind of a show that's by collectors for collectors. They really have primarily a collector focused and a collector centric message and theme and approach to how they do things. And so I really appreciate the About the Card show every week. I like that one quite a bit.
They're not they're just three guys talking about the hobby that they love. I like it a lot too.
Yep. And so, I really appreciate that aspect of things. One of the other ones that I listen to pretty regularly is the podcast version of Go GTS Live as well. I don't always get to see them live on Thursday nights, but I do like to listen to them afterwards. One of the different things I like about that show is, one, they kind of recap some of the new sets that are coming out. They kind of break some of those new sets, and there's an aspect of that I like. But they also tend to bring in some of the stories of things that are going on around the industry. And for whatever reason, they're things that I don't always come across on my own and through other people I follow or anything. And so it's oftentimes that they bring something different that I haven't seen before, that I haven't checked out before. And so I really appreciate that. And then the other one that I probably listen to that has more of a financial focus is the Breaker Culture Weekly show. And I don't know that they're on actually every single week, but they talk a lot about the financial movement and the financial aspect of cards. And so that's not my entire focus, but I like to be exposed to a wide variety of topics and angles on things. It helps me learn and grow. And so having both shows that I consume that are more collector focused and also shows that are more business or financial focused, I think gives me a good balance.
I agree. No, I think Rob, at Go GTS, the GTS connection is important, just to have a distributor there to know what's going on. And Rob's certainly Rob, maybe Ivan too, I guess, but Rob for sure is a podcasting veteran. So they bring some, again, it's a must listen for me as well. So your turn. Another question.
So as I was growing up and getting into cards in the late 80s and early 90s, Beckett was the go-to, but there were several other sports card magazines and price guides that were out there in the market at the same time. And I was curious, as you were ramping up and continuing to grow Beckett, I was kind of curious, was there much dialogue, collaboration? I was too young to be able to pick up on if there was animosity or some of those things. Of course, there was competition, but what was that relationship like with the individuals who were running those other publications, or did you have much of a relationship with them?
Actually, we did. Basically, our guys did. At that point, we had a lot of price guide analysts, a lot of my teammates that I really enjoyed. They were hitting the shows. So they were bumping into sort of competitors. It's a huge industry hobby, and we didn't we didn't have a monopoly, but we had obviously a really strong market share, and we were out there hitting it hard. So, but we never thought we were really competing with those. We're competing with anything that costs $3. We want people to get our magazine back when it was mainly a print product, and we wanted to be as accurate as we could. And we were, I don't know that I was. Imitation is a serious form of flattery, but we would prefer to be the imitated, we weren't the imitator. And so generally we were out there doing our best, and realized that many of the other publications that were out there were doing the same thing. We'd see the SED guys, the Tough Stuff guys, Doug Cale, who was doing was with another one. Some of those guys after their we didn't really hire people away, but we did hire some people that had that experience, and really tried to have our own version of team spirit, of our guys really pulling together to put out the most accurate price guides, and let the competition fall where it may. We were going to try to be as accurate and responsive to a very dynamic market, and we did that for a long time. So I'm retired now, and I don't really think I have enemies in the industry. I like I said, I wasn't trying to put anybody out of business. I was just trying to do the best we could, and our team, I think, had that same attitude. Okay. What's your take on Gary Vaynerchuk? Okay, because you're younger than I am. You're more social media and digitally savvy than I am. So what's your take on Gary V, again, as being positive for the industry with his the reach that he has and the influence that he has?
Yeah, I come down on the side that I think he is a net positive for the industry, and I say that for a couple of reasons. I had followed along with Gary for probably at least a year before he really started to talk about cards last year in the early part of 2019, and I was following him mainly because of his guidance and information that he shared about growing a online presence and marketing and building a brand. And so that's kind of where I'd initially followed him. And then he started talking about cards. And, a lot of people, it seems in the card world, come down that he is either a hobby savior or he is the worst thing that ever happened to cards, and is going to bring in the quote unquote wrong type of people into the industry. And I think that if people step back and take a look at the message that he's really selling, there's a lot of things that are beneficial for people both in their day-to-day life as well as the hobby world. So bringing attention to yourself or the products that you're trying to sell, or the podcast or media that you're trying to create, that is so important. He teaches a serve first mentality, to give, with that being your primary focus. And if you serve enough people, then the rewards will follow. And I think that is a message that everybody needs to hear. And I think his goal is to help teach and help people grow and become better people. And I think that's something that we can all benefit from. So I think there's things that he shares that are applicable both to the card world and to life in general that are net positives if people will start to put them in practice.
I basically agree. I mean, he's a promoter, and he's a great promoter. So I think you just take that with that's the personality type he has, and he's true to that. And again, I think there's way more positives than negatives. One of the things I do in my post Beckett Publications years since I've been retired is I do a lot of convening of meetings and help organizations, businesses, ministries, nonprofits, and leaders, and do a lot of general consulting. And some of the stuff, when it gets into some of this more digital stuff, I have a lot of younger friends that I'll invite to these meetings. And many, many years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, it seemed like, one of my good friends that's a generation younger than me said, "You got to read this book by this Gary V guy." And so he's been on my radar as kind of somebody that's savvy for a little bit of a futurist for a long time. So I've a good friend to thank for that many years ago. So I'd already read the book, or one of his first books, and kind of got the gist of that. So, like I said, I think you're spot on there. Okay, I'm going to give you last question, and then and that'll be it for today. So, any final question, Mike?
I'd say my last question for today would be: I'm interested in knowing, are there any particular collecting projects, goals that you're pursuing right now?
Yeah, I'm trying to have less cards. Have less cards this year than I did last year, and every year. And I'm kind of thinking that if I can have 10% less cards each year for the next 10 years, I'll be down to, actually, if you keep just getting rid of 10%, it's like you just keep, there'll still be a bunch. But if I get rid of approximately 10% a year for 10 years, I'll be left with something that can go from a room full of cards to a closet full of cards, or a drawer full of cards, or a wall full of cards, without I have too many cards now. So that's what I need to do. And I'm trying to get the cards that are still decent cards, but not all great cards, but decent cards, getting them. It's been delightful to try to get them in the hands of other collectors that, what I'm not going to have room for, somebody else might really cherish. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm enjoying doing that. And I'll probably escalate those efforts over the coming years, because my season is decreasing, and your generation is taking over. So thank you for being a responsible guy that people like me can hand off to. So thanks, listeners. Thanks, Mike Sommer. Keep up the good work, Mike. We'll do another episode at some point, and I'll continue to enjoy your podcast, I'm sure. Love to be a guest on yours, because I enjoy that. Although you never sound like yourself when you're listening to yourself on the podcast. But again, thanks, listeners. Thanks, Mike. Be back again tomorrow with another episode.